We have two DSAC committee members online, Charlie and David. David Hackelman. The other David has travel plans and had to leave early due to weather, and I don't know if Brent is going to be able to make it or not, but we do have a quorum. All right, so I think we can just go ahead and kick things off with a period of public comment. Bailey, can you remind me what the time limit is? Is it 3 minutes for public comment? So we don't have anybody in the room who wants to comment. Is there anyone online who would like to? Oh, so sorry, Charlie says she can't hear audio. Has that been fixed?
It's okay now.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
I was scared.
Bailey, do you want to?
Sure. Becky, if you would like to provide some input, I'm unmuting right now, or asking you to unmute. If not, that's okay too. We have another person, PGN. Comments. Great. You can go ahead and provide your comments now.
All right. My name is Paul Neatfeld. I'm a North Benton County resident, and I actually have a question for the group. This might really go directly to the franchisee. I don't know. I like to back calculate the intake volume for the previous year, knowing the revenue that Benton County made off the landfill. And if you just follow the formula of the fee chart in the landfill franchise agreement, and if you know what Benton County actually got paid, you can calculate what the intake volume was that those payments were based on. So if I do that for last year, I come up with a figure of about 1.045 million tons, roughly in line with the previous few years. However, if I go to the Oregon DEQ solid waste disposal reports, which are done quarterly, and add all those numbers up, I get about 1.117 million tons. So there's a discrepancy there of over 72,000 tons. And so my question is, what was the actual intake volume of Coffin Butte last year, and how should I reconcile the figures that are listed in the solid waste disposal reports for ODEQ with the intake figure that the county's revenue is based on? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
That would be one for you, Brett.
I don't have that answer right in front of me. I'd have to talk to my finance manager and see why there's a discrepancy. I believe the number that I've heard all along is the 1.1 million. So I don't know why a franchise fee would have been paid on something less, but I'm not the expert. So I don't know if there's something that we take in that doesn't count towards franchise fees. So I'd have to find that out. I don't have that answer.
Yeah, I understand there might be some puts or takes there in terms of those numbers. So at this point, I've kind of forwarded this question to Bailey Payne. And so if Bailey could work with the franchisee to try to figure out, the answer to this question, what was the real intake figure? And then secondly, how should I interpret the numbers that were reported to ODEQ and relative to what the county should get paid on? That would be very helpful. And you can just, if you could get the answer back to me via Bailey, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and I will follow up with you for sure.
Thank you.
But just so we know, are the numbers that get sent to DEQ, those are your numbers? You report that's your intake numbers? Or?
I personally don't send those.
Yeah.
So it's, I'd have to talk with my
Yeah,
finance team to see where those numbers come from. Like I said, I believe the number is around 1.1
Yeah.
of actual tons. I can't explain a discrepancy without going and talking to them and seeing if there's something that's omitted from the franchise fee.
yeah.
I don't know the answer. Yeah. No, because we've had a lot more than 70,000 tons of special waste. So I don't know the answer, but I've got it written down to talk about actual tons versus franchise fee tons, and this 1.1 versus like 1.04 or about 70,000 ton difference. So I'll ask that question.
Is the current concern by the citizen that there's not sufficient revenue for the amount of material being taken? Is that the nature of the getting at the discrepancy? I'm trying to understand the context for the question. Like, once you have this information, it'll be like, aha,
Yeah, Paul, could you explain your interest in these figures?
Yeah, sure. So my motivation for trying to work backwards from what the county was paid is it gives everybody earlier visibility into what the previous year's intake actually was. Because typically if we wait for the annual report to come out, that's usually late Q1, sometimes late Q2, so it takes a while. And it should be a pretty straightforward calculation to kind of run in reverse. If you know the county's revenue, the fee schedule is clearly defined for 2024 and the previous years before that in the 2020 landfill franchise agreement. And so from knowing the revenue number, which I can obtain from the county finance department, it's pretty straightforward to back calculate what the intake was.
Yeah, sorry,
And
Paul, I guess
I
I'm
went
just,
to cross-check it and it doesn't agree with what I'm getting from ODEQ, and that was the concern.
sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to interrupt, but what is your interest in getting the numbers early?
Well, I've always encouraged SWAC and DSAC to try to monitor in a more timely fashion the intake into the landfill, because we're running pretty close to the 1.1 million ton per year annual cap. And it's just helpful, I think, for everyone to know as soon as possible what that figure was. And I will tell you quite honestly, in the past, the intake cap under the previous landfill franchise agreement was exceeded for several years and the county did nothing. And so I'm trying to pay a little more attention to it now to give county folks a heads up if in fact we are exceeding the cap.
Keep in mind that the 1.1 million does not include special waste. So we can actually go over that amount with special waste because it doesn't apply to the cap.
And I'd like to add too that in some of the numbers that I've provided in the past, didn't make that distinction and didn't pull out the special waste. So that's some corrections that I'm going to need to make. For instance, last year, initially, I believe that they'd exceeded the 1.1 million cap. But in fact, when you factor out all the special waste and other materials, they were definitely under it.
can I ask why special materials are not part of the cap? I don't have any background in this. I don't know why.
It's municipal solid waste is what it's measuring. And so some things that aren't really something that a business or a household would generate, like industrial waste, soils, asbestos is considered a special waste too.
So the biosolids come from wastewater treatment plant, that you're saying that wastewater,
Sludge.
that sludge that's part of the special waste. It's not part of the cap.
Yeah, probably the best example I have recently is when we had all the forest fires up Santiam Canyon. They brought down, thousands of tons of burnt material from the houses and things like that. And so if you have a natural disaster, we can't be limited on where we dispose of stuff if all of a sudden we've got a cap on everything. So the special waste doesn't fall under the cap so that we can, take care of special events, special waste things. So that's my understanding of
We
it.
saw an example of that 9/11 went to the Fresh Kill landfill, which was closed for the Twin Towers. That's just an example there.
Sure.
Okay,
That helps. Thanks.
yeah, thanks, Paul. Should we move on to the next? Anyone else?
Kevin, do you have any comments? Lucy Jones, do you?
No,
have any-
not tonight.
Oh, okay, thanks, Kevin. Lucy,
No.
okay. I think that's everyone.
Okay, great. So moving along, we have next on the agenda to review the last meeting's minutes and go over the action items that were identified. Has everyone had a chance to look through the meeting packet?
So I missed it in my email.
Okay.
So I'll admit I have
I
not.
just have a couple of corrections there. It promoted me to a commissioner, and it should be member. And it's on page 2. Commissioner Morel and Commissioner Lively and Coster, and then on page 5, as a commissioner, it should be just members there.
These are identifying DSAC members and it says commissioner,
Pardon me? Yeah, it should be a committee member.
committee member.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, that sounds like a kind of a garbled transcript.
yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I noticed was I think these minutes are a little bit different from how they've been done in the past because Bailey's been doing the minutes for a while. And then I think you now have an administrative assistant to help you with the minutes. So one question I had about them was whether we like this new presentation because it does involve a lot more synthesis. Like I think when you did the minutes, it was very much like a kind of play-by-play, like this person said this person said that, and it was all kind of like laid out. And this is very much more of a summary. And I do think some things were missed, like we had a discussion at one point about the methane emissions monitoring. And we, talked about David working with Republic to work out some methane numbers, and that I don't think that discussion was really captured. So I wonder, I don't know if anyone has any strong feelings about it. I wonder if if we could give the administrative assistant a little guidance to be a little more detailed. Maybe. I don't know what would be helpful to them.
Yeah, and she has a lot more experience taking minutes and I think probably follows a more traditional county way of doing minutes.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't think you need to go crazy. And I mean, there's a reason that there's a distinction between minutes and transcripts, but I think maybe yeah, we just have to hit the right balance.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have any other notes on the minutes?
Oh, may I?
Yes.
I tend to agree with you that the minutes should reflect the important points during the meeting. And if it missed some of the stuff that I'm interacting with or anybody else is interacting with, then that should be in the minutes.
Sorry, Chuck, did you have a note?
I just want to follow up on a couple of your comments. On page, seems like odor is the largest complaints there. So what I was just wondering if, for clarification, is basically, I don't know, when they look, you're sampling stuff.
Sorry, Chuck, we're on the minutes now. Are you looking at the minutes or are you on?
Oh, no.
Yeah, we haven't moved on to the next thing. I think you might have moved on to community concerns.
Yeah.
We're still in the minutes.
Okay, that's fine. I was just trying to follow up on your comments and stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. that's fine.
Did anyone else have any other comments on the minutes or any corrections? Okay, so at the end of the minutes, very handily are the action items from last time. And I think, Bailey, you copied them all into the agenda for today. So on page 3 of the agenda. Per Ken Eklund's suggestion, Bailey reached out to DEQ and EPA to ask about what is going on with them with
I
regards
did
to,
just get a response
Oh,
from
you did?
EPA a day or two ago. It was kind of a nothing burger, but I can share that with the DSAC.
that would be great. Yeah, it's very weird because, I don't know, from my perspective, it's very strange because the news coverage of Coffin Butte in the Gazette Times and various other, in the Statesman Journal, when they reach out to the EPA or DEQ, they get, the officials decline to comment saying it's an active case or something like that, but they don't seem to share any information. And then a few weeks ago, there was I think some kind of third-party investigative nonprofit that released I think managed to get another EPA report on methane traverses. I don't know if you saw that, Brett. Methane traverses, still finding, exceedances. But Bailey, you reached out to them and they didn't get back to you about sharing the report. So like,
Are you
where
talking
did
about EPA?
the EPA report the report they obtained from the EPA, I think with a FOIA request.
So
Yeah.
they didn't send that to me.
Yeah. So there are things happening, but well, there may be things happening, but it's unclear what those things are. We can't seem to get to the bottom of it. So I don't know if anyone has any ideas for what to do.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused by what you said, Bailey. So you said you did get a response, but you say it's nothing. Can you, are we covering that now, or is that a different agenda item?
Yeah, no, that's what we're talking about now is like,
Okay,
yeah.
it's like, what
the
does that
methane.
mean? It's a nothing burger for me. That's not language they use, so I'm not sure what you mean by that. I know what you're implying, but like, what do you really mean?
There wasn't much in it that indicated, it was just the results of the tests that they've conducted. And we already know about that. So I'll forward what they sent me to everyone.
So it's like it's essentially numbers without any kind of interpretation or elaboration. Is that what you're saying?
So we have information to share. We reached out to Benton County on, I believe, the 31st. Russ Notkey communicated with Rachel. Is that correct? So we did get a letter from EPA. It's an information request asking for some information. We believe that the information request is part of just the administration's overall countrywide request of information from all landfills. There's no notification of violation or fine. It's an information request, and it's given us, I think, 60 days to put together information. Upon our review, it all seems like it's normal landfill information that we would have. And so we are working to pull all that information together and respond with the information. But again, there's been no fine. There's no implication of fines or findings. It's just an information request at this time. And we did communicate that with Benton County.
Gotcha. David, I'll get you in just one second. Is it all related to methane or are there other?
No, it's
Okay.
like all based off what I know, it's just all like operational information for the landfill,
Gotcha.
but it's not pointed specifically at methane.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
David.
Yeah, I'm a little worried that evidently you're not getting some communications, which is really not fortunate for us. So there's something odd about this. And I don't know why we wouldn't be like sharing this conversation in some way to make sure that we know what's going on, that whether or not there's a communication. So I'm very puzzled about why somebody else might get it and not us or you. Or maybe there isn't a message. We might have to figure out a way to have some kind of a communications link to ensure that there is or isn't messages that are being conveyed or trying to be conveyed, because it seems very, very mysterious to me.
Yeah, certainly it seems to be a conflict of information.
Yeah, I mean,
I think a lot of it's opinion, and we're not going to react to opinion.
yeah, I think, from my perspective, it's just that, it's unclear at the moment to the public what is happening. Like they read one thing in the papers and that's all they're getting. And EPA and DEQ are saying things, but they're not providing any more information. So that's really all it is. Like, I just feel like if there's any way that we can kind of get them to be a bit more open about what, if anything, they're actually doing, I think that would be helpful. But that information is not forthcoming,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
and
and I hate to, I don't want to, plague them with questions. I'm just trying to make sure that we know as a team whether or not anything is or is not happening, so that if we see something in the news or something comes up from some arbitrary source, we can find out whether it has any relevance, because that's really not, this is, in my mind, I don't know whether it's disinformation, misinformation, or information. I don't know which one of those three it is.
right,
Yeah, look, all I can say is, I hope you all saw the passion that I shared at the last meeting of being accused of having some information that we didn't have. And so as soon as we were notified of the information request, we reached out to Benton County with the intent of sharing that information tonight. But that's all I have is a request for information.
right. That doesn't even seem to be related to methane.
Well, I mean, there's going to be all that stuff in there, but it's not specifically pointed to some thing. It's a broad scope of information request.
Yeah.
Brett, when's the last time, if ever, they've asked you for this kind of information? Is it like a year ago or never or 6 months ago? I mean, has there been kind of like a periodicity to that request for information?
I don't know that answer. I've been with Republic for 8 years, and I've been in my role for just over 2, but I'm not aware of any information request in the past.
Okay. So it's at least 2 years, if not longer, since you've been asked. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, I don't have any bright ideas here.
Let's start with the regulator instead of Republic. Usually when a regulator comes out, he says he's out for inspection and he dates that, and then he either finds something or not. So if he does find something, then he writes a violation or whatever, and that's what we should really look at, because they're still a public entity, DEQ, so one could write down and say, give us your test results for the last 10 visits or something like that.
Mhm.
And then if there's nothing, then write a information.
I think that's the problem, and that's what I think what we've been trying to communicate is that, look, I don't work for the regulator, but my knowledge of the process is that, you guys got to see that the landfill is an ever-changing environment.
Yeah.
And so when we do surface monitor testing, or if DEQ comes and does surface monitor testing, the whole point is to find exceedances, to find the problems, and then they give us notice of where those are at, and then we come in and we add additional cover, or we come in and we say, hey, when we go, when we're going to plan another $1 million for gas well expansion, that's where we're going to plan our expansion, because we've got some exceedances in this area. So it's all about looking at the process and understanding that we need to come in and either put in more cover or put in more wells to get the gas. They're not coming in looking for an exceedance, in my opinion, and going to fine us or give us a notice of violation on every exceedance. It's an opportunity to correct the situation.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think that there's a lot of miscommunication, is when they report that they had so many exceedances, people are looking for a violation or a fine every time, and that's not how it works.
No, it doesn't. They want you to perform.
Yeah, I think, again, I've never been a part of a situation where we got fined, but I would assume and I would expect that if we didn't fix the area in question, that it would result in that. So, I mean, that's just kind of my
Yeah,
understanding.
I think, go ahead, Jennifer.
Let me see if I can get this maybe right. So there's 2 parts to this. So it sounds like no exceedance is potentially an issue because there may be a corrective action. So one reaction would be like, oh, we don't have to worry about exceedances, which is maybe not what you're saying.
No.
But at the same time, is it possible that maybe what's missing for us or the public is it like if you went back to an area, or let's say you already did, and you can demonstrate that an area that did pose an exceedance after that corrective action, in a subsequent pass, you're like, hey, it actually is, so that that follow through, like that did correct it.
Right.
That would give anyone a sense that issues are identified, action is taken, and sure enough, it worked. It's that, did it work? Otherwise, there's, do you know what I mean? If there's
Yes.
no closure, it just seems like exceedances would always be expected, and that's okay, because we're gonna fix them all, but that data that we fixed it is maybe what the piece that's missing to go, yeah, that whole process of exceedance correction and fixed, that's the last piece that's maybe missing. To
I think there's two problems here that I see. It's sort of like, if I do electrical, I have the electrical inspector come out and they have a form and they check off what's good and what's bad, and then you go fix it, I don't even think that Republic is receiving a message when they complete their observation. And if that's the case, then there's no way that we can do anything. So, whether or not it's an exceedance or, it'd also be nice to say, well, this is a good area. So, I think maybe this organization, not Republic and not us, but the people that are coming in, is it the EPA or DEQ, they kind of owe us a report after each observation. And it doesn't have to be exceedances, just a report saying we did this and that's it, and these are the things that we did, and we found opportunity for work here and no opportunity here or something. Just, otherwise it's just ridiculous to have them even come out.
I think, so far as I understand it, the EPA doesn't kind of give those inspection reports freely without some, I think the last time that there was a big splash on the methane emissions question, the report was obtained through a FOIA request. So I don't know, maybe there's a way we can establish a relationship with them whereby they give them to us.
The EPA information that I did receive contains information about a site inspection that they did, and then what the planned follow-up was.
What was the date of that inspection? Do you know?
I'll have to double check it. I want to say that it was from June of 24.
Okay.
But I'm not positive on that.
Just for clarification, the state DEQ is an agent of EPA, but there's a lag time for that information going up. So most prominence is with DEQ is when they come out and do an inspection, and whether they find a violation or not, they usually code something that says no violation. So, that's the main source of flow we kind of want to get into, I think, even because everybody says EPA, and I look at the information there, it's 2 and 3, 4 years old. It just takes that time to go up, where DEQ has more of a presence here. And I'm not sure if it's Eugene, Salem, or Portland that comes down here.
Yeah, I think there's two things happening. There's the question of like, what are the methane emissions and what is the EPA finding? And then there's also when the EPA says we have an active, whatever the case may be, case going, and so we can't talk about Coffin Butte, what does that mean? And they won't say anything about that. And I'm just curious, like, if they're saying it, so like, either the reporters are misquoting them, or there's some kind of miscommunication, or something is happening and they don't.
No, generally, it's just like the FBI, it's an open case now, even with EPA, in the sense that it's open case and they haven't ruled on it yet.
Yeah,
So
but usually, there's like,
Yeah.
the EPA has an open database of their active files, of their
Yes.
active cases, enforcement cases. And if you search for Coffin Butte, it does not show up. So
Right.
who knows what's happening? But why don't we move on a similar subject? Our next action item was the landfill emissions monitoring. So we talked last time about David Hackelman working with Republic to try to put some numbers on things, like how much methane is being captured by the gas collection system and how much of it is being released into the atmosphere and things like that. I don't know if, David, you've had a chance to work with Paul or Brett or anyone on this yet.
Well, I've offered, but I haven't had any response. I think in part, this move of the fellow into the place to take the job as part of the situation. I'm more than glad to interact, but you see, my primary goal here is to make sure that we have information so we can express to the public instead of just hearing innuendos and rumors and stuff going on. And this is another step. So I'm happy to interact, but I just need to know when and where to meet with folks, and I'll be happy to do it.
Yeah, and look, I'm not the expert, so we're just gonna have to wait for Paul, and I apologize that we are transitioning from Ian to Paul, but Paul is in California trying to move himself and his family up here, but we're not avoiding anything. It's just, I'm not the expert, and I wouldn't even know how to calculate something like that.
Yeah,
So
that's why I'm saying that's what we should do. So maybe there ought to be some way that I can set up some time with Paul once he's up here, but is there a schedule I can get some time on? You know, because I've got a kind of busy schedule too. And so if we can just pick some times that we believe he's going to be available, and then I can see which one of those I can fit, that'd
Yeah.
be fantastic.
okay, I'll get in touch with him. We work together, so I will see what we can put together.
Thanks a lot. I'd like to have that so that by the next meeting, we will have at least established times that we're going to meet. And together, Paul and I can work out the topics, I think, once we have time to meet.
Yeah.
If I may, I met with a couple members of the Valley Neighbors for Environmental Quality and Safety, and they've put some work into a spreadsheet that's looking at methane as well. So I think our approach is to look at the information that they've provided us and also look at some EPA models. I've already reached out to Paul, who we're planning to discuss it further.
Sounds good.
Can I ask one clarifying question? And it has to do with this exceedances thing, going slightly backwards. So am I getting this right, Brett, that essentially we only get the bad news, which is exceedances, rather than the good news, which is here's where it's not exceeding? And like the good news of actions that have been taken, you know, so that sense of action, reaction, identification, and remedy, that kind of cycle, is that fair to say? Because I think that's what I'm hearing from you. You get exceedances, but that's good because it helps you folks know where to look. But the public doesn't hear that part of the story. They don't get the, oh, we took action and, oh, sure enough, here's some sort of data that says that was successful. Is that fair to say? Because it's like people getting part of the story.
That's how I feel. Again, I need to learn a little bit more about the process, but when Ian was here and I was working with Ian, those were our conversations, is that, finding exceedances was a normal part of tuning the car per se. We were taking the car into the shop and we're looking for leaks, and then we're addressing those leaks and meeting the expectation of who did the inspection. And then we start all over again. So it's
or that knocking noise is gone. And so that's that, oh yeah, that issue is gone. There's some clue about that. But I'm also hearing that the flow of information is from DEQ or an EPA is not going to be good. I suspect it will not improve in the near term. Listen to the what's going on right now. I suspect there may be folks in not only federal but state positions where the flow of information, if anything, it is going to not be what we expect. So if it wasn't great before, it's going to not be great for a while, because I think there's a lot of concerns about a lot of things. So I'm not expecting much, actually. But okay, so that's your general impression.
Yeah.
There's no wrap back around and closure, and there's no success part of the story that goes out to anybody. I think for me, it's the first time to kind of like, that's the second time I've heard, I'm like sinking in, like, oh,
I guess,
yeah.
I don't want to say something that I can't verify, but I don't know why we wouldn't be willing to share, if there were findings, what we did to repair those or to address those. I mean, you would think that we would want to share that as a success story, right? So, but I can't say that. I don't know that we've ever been asked that before. So I would want to make sure that I could say that we would be willing to do that, but I don't know why we wouldn't be. If they're saying, here's the findings, and we say, okay, yep, we're gonna come in and put in wells here, or we've applied more topsoil for cover, or we've, sealed it up around the wells where this was leaking. I don't know why we wouldn't be able to share that, but I don't know why we wouldn't.
Do they
But I don't think
request
we've
that?
asked. I don't think we've been asked.
Yeah. Does EPA request that, like, information of you after?
I don't know that. I don't know that answer.
Okay.
I just literally know that the process has been, they have findings. They report the findings to us. We have so much time to respond and provide corrective action. And then my understanding is it's signed off as, yep, you've done what we've asked. But I don't know all of the details in between, to be honest with you.
So that, in other words, that should start a citation process. Not that it's going to be a fine or anything, but a corrective process then by a declaration on a piece of paper that this is what they found. You do those, sign those off, and then send it back to them.
Again, I don't know the process,
Yeah,
so I need to learn the process.
Yeah. So
That's what was laid out in the EPA report that they sent was, where they noticed issues and then what the correction was.
okay.
When I said it was a
Not the
nothing,
data that says, sure enough, all that data and all that dirt and whatever you did, thumbs up. It sounds like you don't get that either. Unless you're.
I don't know that. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Okay.
so as a general manager, I'm not technically savvy to every single detail that Paul would be aware of. I mean, I have 305 employees and run 11 different divisions. And so I know a lot, but sometimes I know enough to be dangerous too.
Yeah, so are you saying basically that really our best conduit is through Paul once he's up and running here?
I think so.
I think so too.
I mean,
That's great.
I think when he's here, he'll be able to provide that information of, hey, we had surface monitor testing done on X date. Here were the findings. This is what we've done. And, we'll be able to speak to it. I can't speak specifically enough that I'm comfortable to be quoted on anything because I don't know the exact process.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we're developing quite a list of questions for Paul when he's back.
Yeah.
All right, the only other thing, outstanding action item is coordination with NRAC, but I want to cover that after the break when we talk about what we're doing. So,
I've had my hand up for a while, so I'm just gonna start talking.
yeah, go for it.
Because it doesn't seem like that works very well. Debbie Palmer asked a question in the chat about the letter that Brett sent that over to the county that we didn't get a copy of. And I think it would be worthwhile for us to get a copy of that to look at it. We should probably see whatever gets sent to the county.
We
From-
sent it to the county, we were aware of the request for information. We did not send them a copy of the letter.
You sent them information saying that you received a request for information?
To my knowledge, a phone call was had between our representative and Rachel to inform them that we received an information request from the EPA.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we did not send a copy of the letter, to my knowledge.
Okay. Charlie, did you have anything else?
Mostly, I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. We have like the paper, we have Senator Merkley saying that the EPA is like hiding some or has some open investigation. And it seems like if Coffin Butte doesn't have any information about that seems fairly misleading. And I think that we do need to have this remedied in a public venue. I think that we need to have that in the papers just as dramatically as it is otherwise, because right now there's a lot of people that think that there's a hidden agenda on the part of the people that run the landfill, which just doesn't seem very fair.
I think our interpretation when you get to Senator Merkley's office, and I can't speak for that office, is that I think across the nation, the administration is looking at all landfills, and all emissions, but like I've said, we've been transparent. The second we got notification of an information request, we communicated it. I was prepared to come and talk tonight about it. I mean, I'm not here to talk about every detail because I don't understand and have a lot of knowledge about all the details of the request, but I'm being transparent about the request, and it's not a fine. It's not a notice of violation. It's an information request. And they've given us 60 days to respond. We talked as a group, and at this time, we don't believe we're going to need any more time than that to pull the information. We talked that the information that was requested is all normal information that we should have readily available, and it's just about pulling it all together.
Gotcha.
So.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate
Perhaps you should ask Senator Merkley what he meant.
Yeah, I mean, we could ask Senator Merkley, we could ask the reporters at the Statesman Journal and the Gazette Times, like what exactly EPA told them. We could blanket the EPA with requests. Like we could have a little.
I mean, it'd be nice when these questions are asked if the reporters or anybody could give some names at the EPA where they got their information. It'd be, I agree, you'd be interested in that close the loop.
Does anyone on the committee want to send some emails? Should I volunteer someone? Charlie, would you like to send some emails?
I'm happy to send some emails if that's what you'd like.
Otherwise, I can send emails.
Yeah,
I'm happy to do it.
or
too.
maybe you guys, yeah, I mean, you guys could divvy it up in some way. I mean, Bailey has already sent, I think you've sent a request to the EPA and to DEQ, right? And did you ask them explicitly, like, do they have an active case and what the nature of the active case is, or?
I quoted the Merkley.
Okay, and they
So-
just kind of ignored that part? Yeah, okay,
It seems fairly official.
yeah,
Is Gelser our representative?
Mhm.
Yeah, because she and Merkley showed up at the Philomath Town Hall. And there were some folks with an interest in landfill, but I don't think anyone particularly was able to ask a question. It was a lottery-based, question-based system. So I wonder if Gelser's office might also be another interested party, regional. If Merkley doesn't respond as a senator level, perhaps maybe Gelser's office might.
yeah.
I think I have the emails for their staff person. So I can share that with excuse me. I can share contacts, staff contacts at Merkley and I think Hoyle's office with Charlie and Brent.
Yeah, Hoyle, not Gelser's.
And I think it's fine for us to, as long as it's okay with the committee to say we're representing the Disposal Site Advisory Committee for the county, and we want this information, that we're requesting this information. Debbie Palmer is also chatting with me, or sort of specifically saying that she'd like a copy, and maybe we could take a look at a copy of the letter that was sent to Coffin Butte that Brett was notifying them, letting the county know that there was a letter that they received. If we could get a copy of that, that would be great, from the EPA.
Yeah, I can't commit to that. I can ask, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay.
And then likewise, when you do file the report, would the report that you send to the EPA in 60 days be available? Has anybody filed a FOIA? I never have. Oh, you have. I wonder if.
I have a procedural question here, just, I think if we're gonna enable, Charlie to be our voice, we need to identify her as the voice for communication of the committee. And I think that's good, but, so that, because I know most of the people you're gonna be sending this to may not even know we exist or what we are. So it'd be kind of nice to identify what this is, a public forum for communication, or whatever we want to call ourselves, so that when you make the requests, it has some credibility, and it knows it'll be going to, a place that is public. So, like a lot of groups have a corresponding secretary, if you wish, which could do that, and or if it has to be me or the chair that does it, that's fine too. But I think we got to make sure that we're doing it in a way that has a little bit of a legality to it.
Thank you, David. Are you suggesting that we would have to give Charlie and or Brent an official title or endow them with certain powers? I'm not quite sure how we would proceed.
Okay, well, somebody's got their hand up. You go ahead.
I was just thinking, I guess if you just look over our bylaws, we could make a subcommittee of one person being the communication, and then it has that certain duty. And then, of course, they report to the chair and vice chair and Bailey with their communications. Just that way it has continuity with the county as well as the chair.
We could make up a title, legislative liaison.
Yeah, subcommittee.
On behalf of the committee, right? So we
Yeah.
definitely need to be semi-official, identify the committee on behalf of the committee, maybe even a website link, like we're legit, here's the members. Yeah.
Right, yeah, I think if you designate a person to use communication, designate one person to manage it, not in.
Okay. Bailey, is that something we can do? Just, give someone,
And so if hey, could you send us info, doesn't work? I mean, the other alternative is a FOIA, although I'm sure that's a pain and a bigger process. But I guess that would be like the backup plan.
That's what I did for the EPA information I was looking for, and also DEQ.
So you've actually done that before. That's a long process, right? Lengthy or?
Couple weeks typically.
Oh, only weeks.
I mean, EPA, it took a month, I think, but
it can vary a lot. Sometimes it can take a year. Sometimes they'll say it's going to be $500 in copying fees for this information, Okay, so David, I need you to take the lead on raising a motion. Help me
Okay,
out.
well, I move that we identify, I think it's Charlie, is that your name? To be our corresponding member or corresponding secretary, whichever you like, for our committee to other government entities. And that includes like senators and anybody else as a government entity, EPA. And that any communications that you make, you're going to also provide us with a copy of the communication that we can put in our public record. That's my motion.
I just want to amend it a little bit, if I may. Instead of a secretary, the subcommittee appoints a chair or a vice chair. So she would be a chair of that subcommittee. And that would give it a little bit more precedence there if you look at the bylaws.
I think structurally that's going to be, so we will have a chair, a vice chair, and then a chair of the communications committee.
Right.
Okay. David, does that sound all right to you?
No, that's a friendly amendment. Sounds fantastic to me, as long as Charlie likes it.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor?
Yeah.
All right, motion passes. So chair of the communications subcommittee.
can I ask who made the motion and seconded for the minutes?
David made the motion. Chuck
Made the
made
amendment,
an amendment,
and
and
he also seconded the amendment.
Yeah.
For a second.
All right, great. All right, so moving on, I suspect this one is going to be quick, but Brett, you're up for a update on the expansion proposal.
Yeah, all I know is that we submitted our expansion paperwork on time, which I believe was 15th of January. And the latest communication that I'm aware of is that it was communicated back to us that the application was deemed complete. So beyond that, I don't know where it's at with Benton County.
My understanding, and I believe Petra's on the line, so she can jump on and correct me if I misspeak here, but the Republic asked for an additional 58 days. So that would push it to mid-March.
Yeah, there is, as part of the application, there was some details. And I believe that the extension was due to trying to pull all that together. Don't quote me on it, but it was like our odor consultant to work with the county's odor consultant to get all these things worked out and mapping but that's the reason for the extension, was to provide the additional supporting documentation. But I still thought that it was still deemed as complete on the 15th when we had to submit, and that the extension is just for some supporting documentation. I could be wrong.
It's probably it's probably one and the same.
Yeah, okay. Julie, do you remember?
I did, our land use attorney told us it has been deemed complete. I don't believe the documents that we're waiting for are required for the completeness, but they are nonetheless documents that we would like to submit and the county would like us to submit.
Yeah.
Billy, do you have any clarity on the timeline now that it's complete? Like, does it sit with NRAC for a while and then go to, like, do we have all the details on like the various stages and dates for those things?
I'm purely speculating here. That in March or April, that it will go to NRAC for their review. From there, it'll go to the Planning Commission. So presumably that would be May or so. And I sure hope Petra will speak up if I'm wrong here. And then, from there, it would potentially be appealed to the Board of Commissioners. And then it could be appealed again to the LUBA.
So the Board of Commissioners has to make a decision, or sorry, the Planning Commission has to make a decision by mid-June, right? Is that right?
Petra, I'm calling my lifeline here.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was just gonna let you suffer for a while while I got presentable. This was a little bit of a passive meeting for me this evening. Thank you. So the question is about that. This is irregular. What has asked us to do. The burden of the 150 days or the intent of that 150 days is that jurisdictions need to process land use applications in a timely manner. But the applicant has the prerogative to give the county more time if they need more time to do things, if I just say that in the most simple way. And so they asked for another 58 days to extend the 150-day requirement that the county has to 208. Is that it? I'm sorry if I'm getting my math wrong, but something of that nature. And all they're asking is, I mean, we have an outline for our staff report put together. We're ready to send a notice, all of that business, but we don't want to do that until the applicant has presented us with everything that they intend to present us, because they've given us extra time. So as soon as they give us that extra information that they think is going to bolster or provide more detail for their application, then we'll be basically initiating the next elements or phases of the land use process. So at this point, basically, yes. I mean, I know it sounds, completeness is just a legal term that just says we have everything that we need to start our process. They've requested some more time to give us some supplemental information, and there's no downside, in my opinion, to allowing for that. So, yes, we've been pushed out probably a month from what we originally thought in terms of public hearings and such, from mid-March to mid-April. NRAC will receive the information as an agency referral partner. And that means that NRAC is going to be presented with the application materials and instructions for their review process, along with all the other state agencies and local jurisdictions. And then at that point, I'll also post a tentative public hearings schedule, as well as opening up the public comment period for folks. Statutorily, the public comment period is only 14 days, but as far as I'm concerned, this is such an important topic for the public that'll probably just open the public comment period for essentially the entire review process.
Okay.
I hope that answered your question. I'm sorry.
So are you saying that the 150-day clock has not started yet, but it will once these other
It
materials?
did. It's just we've added 58 days to it, or Republic Services is basically given the county an additional 58 days. Generally, what happens on less complicated projects with they'll ask for 150 days. You go through the entire process. You get to the end of the 150 days, and if the county has not made a decision after the appeal process and stuff, the applicant will ask for what's called a writ of mandamus. And that basically says that, hey, county, you didn't meet your statutory requirement to go through your entire review process in a timely manner. So now we're going to essentially appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals to say that we're going to be able to essentially move forward with our permit, and that would be a statutory obligation of the county to do that. But Republic Services nor the county are interested in that. We just want a process that has all the information out in front of us. And so that's why the Public Services has asked for some additional time to supplement their application, and has given the county some additional time to go through the entire process, and to give the public additional time as well to review what they've submitted.
Got it. Great. Thank you, Petra.
Mhm.
All right, we're running a little bit behind, but why don't we wrap up really quickly with an update on fire safety. So at the last meeting, Bailey shared that the board wanted us to work with Republic to kind of investigate the various like fire monitoring and fire safety practices that could be implemented. And David Hackelman volunteered to work with them on, I guess, exploring those options and presenting a new report for the board to work with, something that kind of like lays out what everything might cost, what is like feasible, and what might not be as feasible. David, have you managed to make any progress in that area, or is that still?
Again, I've offered to do so, but I haven't had any response as to timing when we could meet. And I'd be delighted to meet and chat about it. I think this is probably also with the same person, isn't it? Or is there somebody else I should meet with?
There's another Paul, is that another Paul thing?
Yeah, that might be a combination of Paul and I.
Okay.
You know, I think what I've shared on the fire information is, well, first I'll say that, you know, as part of our expansion request, we did an extensive fire survey, and, you know, we had a third party provide that information. And, you know, I mean, the report came back where, you know, supports, and we feel that it's accurate, that there's very minimal risk of fire. I mean, it goes, you know, there's a full fire report. I don't have it here with me, but I think it supports our stance that we don't believe that there's significant fire risk at the site. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not willing to participate in something. We are looking at options just in case we do agree to something. There is like a portable fire. I'll call it like a fire rover. It doesn't necessarily put out a fire, but it's a device that you put up at the site that is run off of solar. It has to have cell or some kind of satellite service. Currently, what we're getting from the feasibility report from the provider is that the cell phone service really isn't adequate out there. And so we'd have to have some kind of like Starlink or service if we were to go down that route. But again, we haven't committed to that. We haven't purchased that, but we do know that it's between $75,000 and $100,000 for that device, and anywhere from $15,000 to $2,000 for monitoring, because it's monitored remotely by, like a security system or something like that. So that's where we're at in the process. Is we're still checking options and feasibility of equipment that we know is available.
Yeah, I mean,
Excuse me, please. I'd kind of like us, you and me and Paul, and probably the Adair Rural Fire Department representative to get together and just kick out around a few ideas, because I think that's like really overkill. Really, because we're talking about during the time when there's a potential fire, which is only part of the year, and there have been some in the past fires, but and I think we can come by with a much lower cost solution that will make everybody very happy. And so I'd like to have us have that meeting together and then present that to this group in a timely fashion.
All right. Yeah, I'll add that. I've got it written down to talk to Paul about the emissions monitoring. So I will put another note in here for he and I to reach out to you about setting up a time to talk about possible solutions that would satisfy everybody.
Thank you very much. And like I said, I do want to add an Adair Rural Fire Department representative or somebody like that who's, somebody that actually might have to go there. All I do is I talk about it. I'm not a person that's going to have to respond to anything. So thank you very much. That's the best way for us to deal with this and come up with, see if there is a need, and if there is, produce ourselves with a very economical solution to the issue rather than what might be way beyond what we need. Thanks.
Okay. Yep.
Follow-up question.
yeah, Chuck.
In the CUP report, I read over that report there, and they said a Fair Practice Act with everybody is snuff the fires first and so forth. So it's not that, technology is good, but the Fair Practice Act is to snuff it instead of just running water into the cells and stuff. Would you agree with that, or is that it? But after hours, who's going to snuff it? There has to be a balance, I guess, is what I'm saying. But
I think to David's point, I think we need to just get together and talk about it, because like he stated, I don't feel like there's a fire risk today. We're talking February 13th or whatever, because it's so wet. But in the summertime, obviously it'll increase. I don't know what amount. I'm not a statistician to be able to figure out what that percentage is. Yeah, we have things in place that we feel are adequate. We've got I think a 1,500 or 2,000 gallon water truck on site. We keep soil on site so that if we get a hot spot, we smother it. We don't like adding water to the landfill if we don't have to, because it creates more leachate. But obviously if it's needed, it's needed. And then we do other things by keeping our working face small so that we can control it if there is a hot spot. So we do certain things, but to your point, I think it's the after hours, and that's why we brought up the monitoring, because what I've heard as a concern is that the ones that have happened recently were reported by people passing by. And so it was like right after hours, people had left the site, something sparked. In one case, it was the flare. We feel that's been resolved because we have an enclosed flare now. But there was a hot load that came in at the end of the day that caused another one. And unfortunately, we were aware of that one. And the operators thought they had it snuffed out, like you said, and then it started up again right underneath our tipper where we had some hydraulic lines that assisted with, that getting hotter. So those are the ones that I'm aware of. And look, I get it. So we just need to have some conversations and talk about some solutions.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. All right, so I'm going to call for a break. Let's meet back here in 5 minutes. All right, we are back. So we were running a little bit over for the first half of the meeting. So I've moved approval of the 2023 Community Concerns Report to this section. And we had planned to have a very long 40-minute discussion of DSAC scope and goals and things like that. And we'll just shorten that amount of time and then spend some more time the next meeting talking about it. So hopefully we'll be able to get somewhere good tonight. So first up, the Community Concerns Report, which is this compilation of community concerns that Bailey puts together every year and sends to, is it to DEQ? All right.
DEQ and the commissioners.
And to the commissioners. Okay. So this one looks similar to the one that we approved a couple of months ago, or maybe it was last month. I did see, there's a lot of uncertainty in the resolution column, but I feel like that would be really hard to chase down at this point. I did have one question, which is that there's some comments that are just kind of very short summaries, and then other ones one that says concerns the landfill causes nearby residents cancer is just a summary, and then the other ones are verbatim kind of summaries of what people said, or the literally copied and pasted what the written comments were. Do you know what the differences between those are?
It may just be who was logging the issue. This report is a compilation of what Republic Services received, what DEQ received, and what the county received.
Did anyone have any notes or thoughts or concerns about it?
About the community concern, the compilation of the community concerns, not sorry that somebody's cat died of cancer.
Chuck, did you have a?
Well, I was just wondering, I look at the community concerns, and mainly it is their testimony to an opinion, and one would leave that intact without really making too much changes to it. But our position is neither to support it or not support it, but just to say that, like the last one is, we've read them over, here's the community concerns, we're forwarding to you, and just this and that is what we're approving, and put that caveat like we did last time on top of it.
Yeah.
Unless there's something blatant, I really didn't see anything blatant. It was just real good concerns, but it really needs to be vetted by county commissioners how that weighs in. So we're just providing an instrument to them with the community concerns.
Right. Are there any venues of community concern that we might be missing in here, or are there else? So there's DEQ, there's the SWAC, there's DSAC.
There may be articles or opinions pieces that were in the Gazette Times, for example, that maybe didn't make it into this list. I'm not sure about that, whether or not those are captured.
Have we traditionally captured those? I don't think we did in the last
I
one
don't
that we
think so.
approved.
I track all of the articles and keep those for reference, but not.
It might be useful, I would think, for the county commissioners to let us know what they would like, because I would think that it would be easier for them to have some sort of filter mechanism where we actually summarize or gather, like give them our take on this, because it seems like there's a lot of information here, and they are not going to read from, how many subcommittees do they have? Like 23 or 25 or some ridiculous number of councils. I can't believe that they would read all of these reports.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if there's some more analysis that we could do that would be helpful. Bailey added this pie chart,
Yeah.
which was, I think, a big step forward, and just being able to visually unpack what kinds of things are covered. But there's a lot of repetition in here. And also like a lot of very good points raised. And I wonder if there's maybe some way we can break it out with maybe a little bit more information than the pie chart gives, just like a layer deeper.
And it seems like Coffin Butte has tried to address some of their concerns. And so those seem like those should be separated out in some fashion. This was addressed in this fashion or blah, 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 so that it doesn't just look like it's a laundry list.
Yeah. Sorry, Chuck, did you have a comment?
No, I just don't know quite how to roll it up unless you have a subject matter there and it rolls up under that. But I don't know if Bailey has.
Yeah, I think this pie chart's pretty good. That you see
Yeah.
that the only context missing in your pie chart is just the number of complaints versus, was there 1,000 complaints or was there 100?
I think it says in there.
Yeah, it does.
122.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was looking for a number.
Yeah.
What we could do potentially is just have a slightly expanded executive summary that breaks out each of these
Right.
items in the pie chart and says like, this is what people were talking about when they were talking about odor. This is, and just kind of like gives a little bit more detail for each of these pie slices. And that way the commissioners would have a little bit more information and wouldn't have to wade through this long spreadsheet to find all of the instances of odor complaints and things like that.
Well, I think it was mentioned earlier, the and that goes with it and what Republic knows about these. And I think I heard that they've coordinated with the state to do more work crews on the garbage on the access road, on the artery roads that lead to the landfill.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been out Independence Highway and it's not necessarily garbage trucks that I see trash coming out of. It's contractor trailers. I see a lot of things blowing out of.
Republic Services fines or has a fee for uncovered loads. So the idea is that people won't be repeat offenders. Also, I know that Republic stepped up their litter patrol program quite a bit from what it used to be.
Yeah, we just signed a contract.
So we will have 4 roadside pickups each month rather than 2.
Yeah, you went over that on the tour. We heard that.
Yeah.
And that's an increase from about 3 years ago when we did a quarterly pickup. And the county did a quarterly pickup. So I'm not doing that right now, but it was 8 per year and now it is 4 per month. So
Excuse me, this is all very good, but what is it you want us to do? Do we, I think this is in stuff that the community has expressed to us, okay? And yeah, there's a good chance that we ought to dive in, figure out if there's messages, but I don't know, are we supposed to approve this as the list of comments that were sent in and then make it a record? or are we supposed to take further action? I think we should decide on that and then go ahead and do one or the other.
I think our role is to be an advisory committee to the commissioners. And so I assume they're counting on our judgment to advise them on things that we think are important they should know. And so, you know, they probably want community feedback, and I like this chart. And like I say, if we send something to them like this, it'd be nice to give them a hand or give Republic a chance to comment on saying, these are the concerns, you know, of like the litter. We just what you said, you know, we've increased our trash patrols, and that you are being a good steward. I mean, one of the things I didn't see in here was what I hear from people who don't complain to this forum was, you know, just the queue line you're trying to improve.
Well, I think David, I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, but I guess I thought what your question was, you know, we're talking about this complaint list from 2023, which is 2 years old. My question is, are those complaints, I don't want to say any different because I don't want to make it sound like we haven't made improvements, but are they similar to the complaints that we're getting now, to where we're worried about the specifics of 2023 complaints? I mean, that's, you see what I'm getting at is like, I mean, we're trying to resolve things, but unless there's something specific or something that stands out from the 2023 complaints, what's the focus there? That's what I would ask.
Yeah.
And look, and I'll just tell you, I'd want to get some numbers to back this up, but my understanding is that before Republic Services filed its first expansion conditional use permit, or, you know, was going to apply, we got very few complaints. Not saying there weren't complaints, there were complaints, but as soon as we filed that we were gonna, or announced that we were gonna expand, we started getting complaints. So are they legitimate, or are they part of the fact that people don't want us to expand the landfill? So that's where kind of our heartache is like, well, wait a minute, where did these come from? We weren't hearing these before. And so we feel it's hard to really know if it's part of an effort to stop the expansion or if it's real.
So simple question, and related to that then, were the mechanisms or the vehicle for complaints the same present prior to the landfill or expansion request versus after? Was the opportunity or the mechanisms for filing complaints in place?
So I'll lean on Julie. So the question is, what I think was the avenue for filing complaints the same then as now, or the mechanism?
Or in 2023,
So
or, yeah.
I think so. I think that it's always been, they call DEQ and DEQ notifies us. And that's another issue I know that Paul has talked about, was just the timeliness of getting that information and being able to actually go and see real time. And I know that there's probably going to be some feedback on that, but no, we do not want to have Paul's phone number out there where everybody's calling Paul and him running out and doing an odor complaint.
So like, let's say the DEQ venue existed before and after, but did more tools or vehicles or websites or whatever, you know, become available?
I would say we ramped them up at the request primarily of the county, and in working with the Benton County Talks Trash group. So we have ramped them up. We have a place on our website now that people can send us a message. So we ramped them up, but I would say in 2023, things were exactly the same. A lot of the complaints that are included in 2023, I believe, are people who came and spoke during the Benton County Talks Trash program. So that feels like an inflated number to me. It was often a lot of the same exact comments week after week after week. So, so that does seem inflated. But I would say now we've settled into probably a better process where you can call the DEQ, you can call the county, you can report something on the website, and we think that's a great process. But I don't know how it compares to before and after. I will say that we didn't have people asking us for more avenues for complaints prior to the expansion. And then I can't give you the exact numbers either, but complaints were in the single digits on a monthly basis.
David,
Yeah, I tend to believe that information from 2023 is not very important to us at this point. It's come in, I think it's noted, and that we need to move on and focus on now. Is there a way that we can do that? I think the pie chart does a good job, and we could dive into these things, but I don't know whether it makes any sense that, maybe we should just look at what's happening now and recently and make sure that there's an avenue for people to bring in complaints and they get acted upon a bit quickly, within a couple of months of the time they turn it in at least.
that's fair. I mean, maybe this is something we can revisit when we get to the 2024 Community Concerns Report, doing a little bit more synthesis, but this feels, I agree, a bit too old.
Also, I see that Debbie Palmer pointed out that the report is for the DEQ. That's the primary reason that it exists, is because it's required by DEQ. The commissioners also get a copy of it. Yeah, that's.
Okay. All right, well, I'll entertain a motion to accept the Community Concerns Report for 2023 as written in the packet. Anyone want to make that motion?
A motion, we accept the.
Thank you. Is there a
I'll
second?
second it.
All right, all those in favor? Okay, great, thank you.
Getting to new news instead of old news.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
One day we will get through the whole backlog. No, we'll just smooth sailing from then on. So we do have a little bit of time, but not as much as we had planned, to just talk about our goals as a committee. So we can set aside some more time next month for this. But I did just want to open up the floor for ideas for things you'd like to see us explore, things we would like to, any guidance we'd like to give the board, or areas where we think we could help make an impact. Does anyone have any suggestions, David?
I've got a couple of things here. One of them is we're the Disposal Site Advisory Committee, and my question really is, are we also responsible for the site across the road for the composting?
Good question.
David, I've kind of wondered that myself. I think this would be the best forum to bring up concerns about PRC, but the focus of this is more on Coffin Butte, is my understanding of it.
Okay, well, thank you. I think kind of our goal, I believe, is to advise, and advise is to advise the commissioners regarding, I guess it would be landfill, Coffin Butte, and then I'm thinking that site too, and identify any public concerns or comments, and see if any action needs to be taken. Because a lot, sometimes we get things like, somebody's throwing away fluorescent tubes. Well, that's not the problem. That's not a Republic's issue. That's the public issue. They're doing something wrong. Okay. And that would have to move to another agency, like somebody that enforces things like that within the city. So I think our goal is to pick up this public information and also our own observations, and get that digested and put in front of the commissioners so they don't have to be in every one of these meetings that we have.
I'll agree with David there. And PRC is really a subset of the waste stream that is captured. And the essence of that, they report that waste stream being captured and so forth. So I look at PRC really as a subset of the landfill, but it still plays into everything else that goes on with it. So I think we should kind of cover it in that, if you would.
It would be helpful to me if we actually had the disposal site advisory committees roles and responsibilities, basically our mission, what is it we're supposed to be doing at the beginning of each minutes, like as we're reviewing them, so that we could kind of have our, appropriate mindset for what we're looking at. It would help me.
Yeah, like what's the county's intention of the scope?
Right.
And specifically how we differ from NRAC. Why are there two bodies instead of one in terms of scope and responsibility?
That is an excellent question. And one of the goal sets, if you will, was to invite the county attorney in because he's first on the laws and he can give us an overview what the implications of everything is or opportunities. So, and he does give that every year, but I don't know if everybody had opportunity to do that. And I don't know if he wants to put in the overtime of this week.
I can ask.
Yeah, regarding NRAC, like I did want to, we had that as an action item, exploring what we could do with NRAC. And I think that's a question we have to sort out is what we want to do, how we want to engage with them, what we want to do as a committee regarding the expansion proposal. For reasons that I'm not entirely clear on, the county has set it up so that NRAC is in charge of evaluating the expansion proposal. They're the county group that's doing so. They don't take public comment, but we do, and we have the advantage of having a Republic representative on the committee. So we have potentially like much more detailed knowledge about what's going on. And what community concerns there are. So it seems like at the very least, we could interface with NRAC and help them. But there are other things that we could potentially do regarding the expansion proposal.
Right, but that doesn't limit DSAC to giving a report into the open testimony period either.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
It doesn't, NRAC stands in as a committee to give a report, but there's all other of these committees, including DSAC. So it doesn't limit DSAC to give a comment into the general open session there and stuff. So we may be looking at it long range. What is the potential here long range if there's only 14 years left, or any of the other stuff that NRAC may not. So we can still be disjoint from them and still put in a testimony that we approve with Bailey here.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. And I think we've been told that we are welcome to submit public comment or comments in the public forum phase.
And that's really what NRAC is doing, is putting it into the
yeah, I think their output goes straight to the planning commission. Well, yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
It's the planning commission is the one that will make the decision.
Yeah.
NRAC will provide feedback and input, but they won't be making a decision. Their input may be, we don't think it's a good idea to expand, but it'll just be input essentially.
I don't think they've gotten it yet, but I would love to know what criteria they're going to be asked to evaluate, like.
That we're working on that now. And I can share that with the DSAC when it's ready.
Yeah. Is there anything else anyone wants to raise now? David, do you have your hand up again? I think you might be muted.
Sorry about that. But also, I think it's okay, but I'm not sure. And that really is, we are the place that the public can provide comments. And I'm not sure if the public knows that. I'm not really sure how we get that around, because it really, like was mentioned earlier, we don't want Paul to be receiving a gazillion messages. We want to regulate that through something that makes it so that any major themes come up. So I'm not really sure, but I think maybe part of our mission is for that public to provide and make sure that the public knows that we are a place for them to bring in their comments.
Yeah, I'm really glad you raised that point, because a member of the public reached out to Bailey and me, I think earlier this week, about odor, reaching out to Republic about odor concerns. And I think she was trying to reach out to Paul Coster. I was waiting for a reply, and Paul is out of pocket right now, but I wonder if we can maybe do some more kind of like assistance in that area, right? And make it more of a public kind of process, instead of encouraging, if community members are coming to us for us to help them, instead of just encouraging them to go to Republic directly, like then we have visibility into things that are kind of recurring as complaints. I don't know. We don't really have a formal process, right? It's just sort of like ad hoc. Like if somebody emails us, we're like, and they've already reached out to Republic and are waiting to hear back, we encourage them to continue.
That's a real good position. It's, you got an aggregate of questions, but how does one respond to it as a group unless you take an aggregate and come to opinion? We can just post our opinion on the website to say, looking at some additions with Republic, they're doing this, this, and this. We have an aggregate. It's not taking every question, but maybe a consensus for one that we could respond to, and then see if we could post it someplace with Bailey's concurrence and say, okay, we're looking at this, just like we discussed tonight with the pickups and stuff. I realize that odor is a big one, and I'm not quite sure but there's other questions we may say. So that way we've got a consensus of an opinion there, and it can be posted there. So if the questions come up again, we don't get a repeat of all the questions. We've got a consensus here with the committee that this is what we're looking at, unless something comes anew with it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're going to get a handle on that.
I think that might help close the loop a little bit on some things, right? Like people come to us with questions, maybe we get an answer, and then we don't have a way of disseminating that answer.
Exactly.
I mean, we could potentially pick like a couple of issues to focus on this year.
Communications that we have a subcommittee with already.
I don't want to give Charlie too much stuff, but
That'll teach you to be on Zoom.
But yeah, I mean, maybe we can just start with one, pick one thing where we would like to come up with some kind of committee report and just encapsulate, community concerns and what we found out, and see how that goes.
Okay.
I don't know what that first thing should be, but maybe odor.
Let's start. Let's work our pyramid up.
It's kind of a curious thing.
I've wondered about, like, on occasion, like I can smell when there's an inversion or the air is like very still, like from my house in central Corvallis can smell something, and I don't know what it is, if it's the landfill or the
Wastewater treatment plant.
wastewater
It's your
treatment.
closest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's a nice air exchange across those.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been sitting at Dutch Bros on 9th Street, and the young people inside are like, oh my gosh, I smell coffin butte. And I'm like, no, you don't. You smell the wastewater treatment plant that's right across the road.
Yeah.
And dirty socks is different.
Yeah.
It's a different odor.
Yeah.
But the PRC has a very strong odor. You hike around in that area, even close, and it's also very distinctly different, the PRC odor. That's very distinct.
I like it. It smells minty to me. So I don't know. Everyone's different. It smells like being on a mint farm.
Yeah, I would say also that being that my family is from the Midwest, that part of it, I've been on some farms where the smell is not as nice as the one from the minty smell you have there. But if odor is a concern for everybody, it could be that we may ask the county to put together some air quality monitoring stations at strategic locations that can kind of identify where odors are coming from, rather than assume that they're coming from point A or point B. Because that's part of the problem, the wrong people are being identified, the wrong sites are being identified as issues, if they're even issues. And some odors smell, but they're not dangerous. Other odors don't smell and are dangerous. So I think that's another direction we might think about wandering into.
I'm not an air quality specialist, but a lot of the air quality monitor, like PM 2.5, doesn't necessarily have an odor. NOx doesn't necessarily have an odor. So those are kind of like big picture quality parameters, but I think their relationship to odor is very tenuous at best. So it's now not proxies for odors. I don't think. It's SO2
It takes
and NO2.
very few parts per million to make an odor.
They've really made an advancement, and I don't know, I've just been reading up on it, is malodor chemicals, where they assess what type of odor is there, and they mix another chemical. I don't know if the chemical is worse, but smelling it, you get a effervescent of something.
The treatment plant odor is Josmin, Gosmin, is kind of cool. Molecules are kind of weird, and the ones that you can smell actually have to be soluble enough to interact with your mucosal membranes. But they have to be volatile enough to get into your nose. They have to be soluble enough to interact. So not that many molecules hit that perfectly. That's why methane doesn't smell. It's not soluble in your membrane. So it's got plenty of gas phase, right? But it doesn't land in your receptors because there's no solubility in water. That's why it goes undetected. So it's those weird little guys right in the middle that trigger the sensory. And sulfur does a really good job at that. There's an odor wheel for like wastewater treatment plants, how to figure out what stink is coming from what. It's been a thing for a while and it's kind of cool.
Got it down to a science.
Just, the ammonia and those, what you mentioned, will go a long way.
Yeah, it gets into the air, but then it can interact with the water membranes and that's how it gets to your receptors in your nose.
I mean, if you've ever driven I-84 between Morrow and Hermiston, there's a hog farm somewhere in there, and it's like you just can't drive fast enough.
Those CAFOs are bad. Yeah. I think what people are doing is I'm guessing they're using odor as a general proxy for contamination. And there's some truth to that, right? That they're among that suite of molecules you detect. There's many molecules that you either cannot detect or you can't because you don't smell them. And we don't have good resolution with our nose. So it's a proxy, right? I think. Yeah, people react to odors, whether it's treatment plant or landfill, it's the same thing.
Yes.
Ooh,
Or the dairy next to my house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
now, I keep getting cut off. I don't know why, because the Zoom has shut off and on 2 or 3 times during this meeting. But basically, all we're talking about is a different region in the space of either the landfill or odors, and it's not a complete connection like you just pointed out. I brought it up mainly because I know the public smell things, and I don't know whether we're supposed to help on that situation or if I don't think there's another entity. So I'm not sure what we should do about it, but I brought it up because it's a good thing for us to think about how we can express it to the.
David cut out again, and so I'm going to talk. I think that it would be useful to get the public comment on a monthly basis rather than an annual basis. And like this, like all of January's would be in February and all of February's would be in March. And we could look at these and at the end of the year say, okay, at the beginning of January, we could say, okay, here's the community concerns for last year, and actually have looked at them all and have maybe summarize them in some fashion or whatever, just to be easier. David, did you want to keep talking?
No, I think we're on to an important process, and what you're pointing out is feedback that's more rapid is really good. And the odors is an example of something, one of us could spin off some time and go through that and provide the public with a little information like was being presented by, I can't remember who's on, is that Rachel that was talking about it, somebody there on the board in the room. And, that's information that
It was
most people don't
Jennifer, I
know.
think.
Oh, who? Go ahead.
Jennifer Fields, right
Okay,
there.
Jennifer, that was a great point. And I think maybe we're useful to help provide some of that information as well. I'm not sure what the best avenue is, but thanks very much. I better shut up and let everybody else talk.
Well, thank you. Thank you both. I will note that Bailey includes community concerns received since the last meeting in the meeting packet. So we could just kind of like, as a trial run, set aside some time to discuss that aspect of the meeting packet during the meeting, just to kind of like check in to see where things are. So just kind of expand the public comment portion of the meeting a little bit to cover those and check in. All right, well, I'm going to stop the discussion here because we're actually running on schedule now. But does anyone want to request any agenda items for the next meeting? Or have any requests of Bailey for the next meeting?
I wanted to just ask Jennifer, like, what her take was on all of the plastic liners that were present at Coffin Butte, because it seems like there's going to be a lot of PFAS, since PFAS were meant to add water impermeability. I'm just wondering what she thought about that and how we would get that leachate that would have PFAS in it cleaned up before it went out to the waterways.
Do you have a bigger question in mind?
Is that good? Is that good? I thought you'd like that.
I'm gonna guess are some like high density polyethylene, polypropylene. I'm guessing, well, actually, I don't know. I suspect they're not fluorinated, although I know people remember not that long ago, the EPA is like, oh, there's this fluorinated high density polyethylene. And it had to do with, I think, packaging for pesticides. And what it was is chemically resistant because they added them so the plastic was resistant. And that's how it got into the pesticide. It wasn't the pesticide itself, it was the packaging. And in our own work, if you get you got a little jerry can for your lawnmower, that's also a fluorinated HDPE. And that makes sense because you got a really amazing chemical liquid that you're going to put in there. I'm guessing because of the vast quantities and probably I'm guessing the inexpensive price, I'm guessing it's not fluorinated. I don't really know that though. I suspect not, but it'd be easy enough to test. So I'm suspecting that those layers you saw, those really dense black things are probably recycled materials themselves. That's my guess. Or it's first run plastics, I don't know. So whether that's-
Are you talking about the material for our liners?
Yeah.
I would doubt that, but I mean, Paul would be able to answer that. I mean, it's all approved material through
Because to
DEQ.
fluorinate stuff like that, I think it's pretty expensive. It's high-end, high cost-in stuff that gets that additional treatment. So I don't know if that was part of your question. The other thing was about treatment of leachate. It's an active area of research. I know that Republic and other services are actively trying to do it, I think, some research or fund some research to try to find ways. One of the most popular ones, it sounds like right now, because it is already so concentrated, is to actually foam it. And so foaming is a cheap aeration way, and you stir up the foam and it's going to preferentially pick up those things that, like the air-water interface, so things like PFAS with that long chain. So we know that foam fractionation is a tool and it's pretty good. It can whip up a lather and you're going to further concentrate from that concentrated medium. Then you have to do, what you're trying to do is treat a smaller quantity of that final waste. So I think they're basically skimming off the bubbles. I think there's a full-scale Australian system in place. What it leaves behind, though, is the shorter chain thing. So like most technologies, the little guys are the harder ones to treat. So I do think it's an active area of research. And it is a very, relatively concentrated medium compared to municipal wastewater. It's much more concentrated than municipal wastewater. So you have that chance to do a more and it's large, smaller volume. So that's the also advantage. You're treating a smaller volume with more expensive technology, trying to get more of the contaminants out of that to try to sort it, to treat the remaining volume with the lower energy. It's all about cost and energy. And I don't do that kind of work, but I appreciate does that make sense, Charlie? So leachates are rough to treat, high salinity, a lot of organic matter. They've got a lot of characteristics that make it hard to treat that matrix. Bugs, it's hard to grow. Some bugs grow in there, great. Some probably don't because of high salinity, high organics, high.
Well, I feel like I could ask you 20 questions about that. Like, it's fascinating. Any agenda items that anyone would like to see us discuss next time?
Isn't it Dave who is our hydrologist? Is that right? He's not here tonight. Is he remaining a member or is he moving? Oh, he is. Okay. I know he expressed in the past and also on the tour a desire to understand the hydrology a little bit better. Look at flow lines to understand, appreciate the well field and what's known about that and what the general direction. That also would help, I think, understanding the hydrology and would also help be a counterpoint to that advertisement. Like, for example, this idea of dumping into Willamette directly. Well, okay, we talked about leachate being trucked to the wastewater treatment plant, and that is a route by which many molecules make it to the river. But the other is any refugee emissions, like what is making it to the groundwater. I think trying to understand what is known about the groundwater quality, so quantity and quality, which way it's going, what water bodies, if any, it impacts, and literally thinking about flow paths to waters that might ultimately discharge to the Willamette, kind of putting it into a bigger context. I think that's an interest of Dave's. I'm interested in that kind of thing. And we've seen some nice maps and we see some well fields, but I think having a little bit more of a focus session would be really interesting.
Brett, is that something that Paul could help with sufficient preparation time?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I would think that the annual environmental reports that you do would be helpful in that.
Yeah, I think pulling out or directing our, because I understand there's lots of information in 800 report. Well, you can imagine it's a little hard. So I think somebody who knows that and saying, take us to the maps, take us to the data, and trying to understand, like, probably just general water quality, like salt is a good proxy for things that tend to travel. So like even simple things like, you don't have to get fancy, but like conductivity, sodium, calcium, whatever, helps us understand like, yeah, this is all pretty much captured, or, oh, it's not, or whatever. But there is information, there are maps. It's having a bit of a session or maybe two on that would be good.
Okay. So I just want to add that in the past, when we have brought that annual report to this committee, we have typically brought in a hydrogeologist who prepares that report and who has worked with Coffin Butte landfill for many years and is very familiar with the well system to talk to this group about it.
Oh, that'd be great.
Answer questions. Now, his name is Eric Tuppen. He's a third-party consultant. He retired last year. We think we could probably, we've talked about this, get Eric to come because he really is the one who understands this really well. But on the other hand, we will have another consultant, our hydrologist, work with us on the coming year's report as well. So I think that's a really good time for that. And we've always done that in the past. That's sort of one of the things that we got away from was sort of the day-to-day business of how we inform this committee. So Paul is new here, but he will get acquainted with those folks and I'm sure can facilitate getting one of those experts here too.
Thank you.
Julie, I seem to remember, because we've talked about this before, was it May that you were thinking would be a good month for that?
I think we did think May was a good month for bringing it forward. You know, I think in the past, like last year, I think we submitted it in June and we didn't present it until November. There was a lot of delay, but I think we would love to get back on that schedule, getting it done and getting here and making the presentation.
That sounds terrific. I learned something on the tour I did not know, but it'd be nice to corroborate that. So I've always found the poplar field rather curious, right, in that entry. So my understanding, and I don't remember who told me this, honestly, what that used to be a site where I guess they used to land apply the leachate. And that those poplars are often selected for phytoremediation because they're good hydrostatic pumps and they're a great way, well, I don't know, great. They're, at least there was phytoremediation was kind of a thing for a while, but I don't see as much attention to it. So I think it's maybe because it's not great, but by drawing a lot of that water up, you can potentially sequester things out. So I didn't realize, I thought it was maybe leachate in general, refugee emissions. What I think it was is to remediate land application in the area, which is no longer done. I don't know who told me that. Dave, was that you? Somebody told me that. I can't remember who told me that. Anyway, does that ring a bell? But it's not a current practice. That tree
It's
is a
been done
dead
elsewhere
giveaway.
too.
That tree type is a giveaway and where it's located in that low area, it's like,
A lot of water
Makes sense.
treatment plants have that too.
gonna make sense.
Have poplars.
So that maybe maybe the hydraulic, that would ring a bell, because that's where those flow lines discharge in that direction toward the highway and then probably end up, if they interact with surface waters, it's at the E.E. Wilson.
All right, so it sounds like maybe May would be a good time for this. Okay, all right, sounds good. Any other business before I?
So the, what you mentioned there, that claim we talked about that went out in the mailer about how leachate is processed, we should address that as a committee. If there is a claim that leachate is being dumped in the Lima River, we need to make a statement that, as a committee, if that's true and we know about it, needs to be addressed. If that claim's not true, then we need to address it as well and say, no, this is not correct information, because this mailer went out to, I don't know how many houses this mailer went out to. But I think that should be something on the agenda, just to talk about it and get it on the record.
So Brent is referencing this mailer that was sent out to the community by VNEX, claiming that millions of gallons of leachate are dumped into the Willamette every year. So why don't we talk about, I feel like we should talk about that as next time when we talk about the goals of the committee. Because I feel like we need to figure out how we're going to engage with the public and what exactly we're going to do.
Well, sure. So, sure, we can talk about next meeting, but it just is, I think our obligation as a committee, if there's a claim out there that something's happening and we know about it and we need to address whether it's and determine if it's true and address it.
I think that's fair, but I don't think our remit is necessarily an FAQ about claims about the landfill. I think we have to figure out what exactly, how we communicate to the public and.
Right. So when obviously, public meeting, we're out there in the community. They say, oh, you're on the landfill committee. Well, did you know that this is happening? And so the committee needs I think the committee needs a response and
Yeah, maybe this is an area where we can.
Well, wait a minute, I'd like to at least state, as far as I can tell, I've been informed that the leachate goes to a waste treatment plant, nowhere else. I don't know anybody else that said anything else about it.
From the waste treatment plant, it goes into the Willamette. So I think that basically they're just talking about where the water treatment plants dump their water after they've been treated. So the Salem goes up further in the Willamette, and the city of Corvallis used to, but will not take leachate anymore. But earlier they did right into the Willamette, but up north, more up north, than it's not going to come into the water supply for the city of Corvallis. But that's a concern. So I think that's where that came from. But I think that when we get a complaint, whatever way we get a complaint from the community, if Brent knows that this is a concern, then that's that's a community concern, just like it would come to us at the beginning of the comment. And so I think it does need to get addressed. If somebody is saying the leachate is directly being dumped in without being treated first, that would be incorrect. And so maybe correcting that and getting that, however we should address that, Brent, and you can discuss it with us at the community concern part, which I think we should really kind of take more actively at the beginning of each session.
I'm a little confused. Are they saying that the leachate is going directly into the river?
That's
the
what's
suggestion from the
implied. When
language.
I read it, that's what's implied in
Well,
this mailer.
you see, the problem is, you know, a generality is hard to get back to a neutral base when it is a generality there. And, you know, what I'm.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because city of Portland dumps into the Willamette River too, and they just expanded their place to start looking at PFAS and using that type of technology.
So when
there.
dumped
So
in the river, that means to me, you know, it's kind of like, you know.
that's where everything.
Okay.
That's the.
So, and
So
like the
that's
valves
matter.
before we had the
Yeah.
combined sewer overflow, that's, we would get eventually.
All right, I'm gonna,
Sorry.
So I think this needs to be, I'm saying this needs to be on the agenda
yeah, I
Yeah.
think,
for the next meeting. And
Yeah.
so there's just on the record that this
Qualified.
Yeah.
would qualify the statement,
right,
because I think it'd be interesting to know how many households got this mailer.
all right, why don't we plan on raising it during the community concerns portion at the very least, and then also discuss how we might address things like this when we talk about DSAC goals. Does that sound like a good plan?
Sure. I think, and so the last comment I'll make, you know, this is around the landfill expansion. So knowing that there is that process in place, let's not kick the can down the road and just bureaucratically kick it down to the next meeting. Let's talk about it at the next meeting and qualify it. Correct. Thanks,
Okay.
Chuck.
All right, sounds good. All right, we're a bit over, so unless anybody has anything urgent, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I ask a question first? Is the intent of our next meeting to not include public comment so that, or are we gonna keep the public comment?
Yeah, I think, so we talked about not including public comments, so we'd have more time to discuss our goals as a committee, but
That's a work session.
it's a work session,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how everyone feels about it. I feel like we should probably keep the structure going for now as community concerns come in, as the expansion proposal kind of proceeds. Like, I feel like this might not be the right time for us to not take community concerns during the meeting.
Yeah.
Does that sound?
Yeah, I would agree. What if we say the first part of the meeting, after the break, we do our more or less closed session. So until the break, we deal with community concerns, everything else, and then after the break, we got to focus on our goals and objectives and things like that.
That sounds good. All right. Okay, anyone want to move to adjourn for the night?
I move to adjourn.
To the second? All right, all
That
those
was
in
faster.
favor?
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. A special thanks to Brett for Valentine's week.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Get home before the weather changes.
Yeah, is she gonna be able to do all of her deliveries with the weather?
Yeah.
I'll
be driving, so I'm not worried about it.
And I suspect he was on DSAC in the past too.
That's a very sweet.
Nicefield. NIES, actually, I've got my computer.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Something like that. Nice.
I'm just trying to keep it straight.
Yeah. Right.
Takes more than five.
Yeah, he, okay. Yeah. They've ISBN.
So that was probably a public comment here.
Yeah. Yeah, he had emailed me earlier about that question. So it's gonna take some digging on our end to figure out why there's that discrepancy.
Silver Spring Road.
Yeah.
Is that the one you turned?
Thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah,
Well, and this is right. So this, I think.
So if
needs to
you
be
turn on Tampico, which is
addressed,
near the land.
yeah,
because it is me on the
That'll
committee.
take you there, and
and I'm
Silver
asked
Springs
about
take
that.
you over there.
Right.
There's a
I
piece
do
of
get
land
asked
in
about
that.
I agree too. I mean,
Call it-
the way this reads,
believe it's
it's
the
like they're bringing
site
a tanker
of
truck up and just directly piping it
And so you
into the
can,
river.
that's the thing about.
Right.
the
So
way it's just there's
So
convert-
this will certainly change opinion if you
So
don't
that
understand the
it
context.
gets
Right.
Yeah, this came to my house.
trucked in, trickled in,
Do you live
merges with the much
relatively
larger
near
flow of domestic
landfill?
wastewater.
I
So
live
it
behind
eventually,
Sheldon School, so no.
that's the other thing, it's hard to track
Because I didn't get one. Did it just come?
volume and.
No, this is a couple months
flow,
old.
so
Oh,
gallons per minute.
I didn't see it.
minutes to flow.
Oh, I should go stop the
Point is,
meeting.
there's a lot of flow in gallons, 24 hours. And then
Yeah, sorry to distract you.
Coming trickle in. So
Needs
they're
to
being
distract.
diluted
Mhm.
into the much larger waste stream going through the treatment plant. And you
Well, I
have
don't think that's